the more we have to heal. So we start the healing today. All right, thank you, everyone. I know everyone is buzzing after the terrific plenary that just finished, as am I. So let me introduce myself. My name is Dan Cole. I'm now a member of J Street's board. But for the first 4 years of J Street's existence, I was a colleague of Steve Krubener's. I headed the political department at J Street. I can tell everyone that it's much easier being here today in my role than it is being a staff person during a summit or a conference. So at the outset, I'd just like to give a shout out to all of J Street's terrific staff for doing all of the great behind the scenes. I also want to mention that it's great seeing so many friends, people that I've worked with and traveled to Israel with, worked on candidate donations with, so it's great seeing everybody here. And so before I turn things over to our wonderful panelists to talk about Palestinian state-building efforts and Palestinian civil society, at the outset, why don't we take 2 minutes and everybody can talk to somebody next to you, hopefully somebody that you don't know well, and you can explain what brought you here. You can download about the session so far. You can talk about this session, some questions you want answered. So for 2 minutes, why don't we do that right now?
So at the end of the session, there will be a chance for Q&A. So there will be a microphone, I believe, in the middle. So when that happens, everybody line up orderly, don't fight. And so the other thing is your cell phone. So absolutely tweet, go to Facebook, do what you need to do, but please silence your devices. So with that all said, let me introduce our moderator for this session, my former colleague, Steve Krubener. So Steve is actually a trained mediator. This panel's in very good hands. Steve has spent the past decade not just working at J Street, but working on Middle East conflict resolution more broadly. Steve spent 5 years in Israel. He worked at Oxfam. He's done a number of different things. And prior to serving in his present capacity as J Street's Chief of Staff, Steve was the director of J Street's Israel International Program. So, Steve?
Thank you, Dan. I'm a trained mediator, but I'm not a trained moderator. So. But in the spirit of moderation, I'm going to try to cut down my opening remarks so we can jump right into what our speakers are going to be sharing with us today. Just a few hours ago, President Shimon Peres and Prime Minister and President Mahmoud Abbas shared a prayer at the Vatican. President Abu Mazen said at the end of the prayer, "We want peace for us and our neighbors. We ask God to bring us a prosperous, promising future to our people and freedom in a sovereign, independent state." In our panel today, we will plant our legs in the present while looking at the future President Abbas prayed for today. What needs to happen to bring about a Palestinian independent, viable state? Although a definite stalemate on the status of negotiations is where we find ourselves today, there's actually a feeling of change on the Palestinian front. The PA can claim a number of diplomatic victories, international recognition of the new unity government, not being totally blamed for the fall of negotiations as in past rounds, winning the UN vote last November, and that's just to name a few. Internally, Palestinian politics seems to be moving forward as well. Since 2007, we all know that the Palestinian political leadership has been split between the West Bank and Gaza, and after many attempts to bring the sides together, a reconciliation agreement has finally been reached. Will it last? Our panel today will discuss the future of a Palestinian state as more and more people, especially in the Palestinian young generation, are becoming disillusioned with the two-state solution. Indeed, Abu Mazen has threatened to dismantle the Palestinian Authority. To what extent is that threat real, and what will be the implications of such a move? Our panel today will look at three main sections of Palestinian society: political, civil society, and business. And we'll ask questions on how Palestinians can move forward in all three spheres toward a viable, independent Palestinian state. I'm going to introduce our panelists in the order in which I'm going to ask them to give opening remarks, and then we're going to go right into a discussion. And as Dan mentioned, I'd really invite participation from all of you here today as well, so we're going to go pretty quickly into audience Q&A. Ghaith Al-Omari is Executive Director at the American Task Force on Palestine. Prior to that, he served in various positions within the Palestinian Authority, including Director of the International Relations Department in the Office of the Palestinian President, and advisor to former Prime Minister Mahmoud Abbas. Huda Arquob is currently the Regional Director of Piece It Together, an organization that uses dialogue, filmmaking, and community engagement to empower youth and build peace among Israelis and Palestinians. She is active in grassroots Palestinian initiatives, focusing on women's empowerment in particular. Lastly, Sam Jadallah is founder and CEO of Taito Life LLC, a technology company based in Burlingame, California. And American-born to Palestinian parents, Jadallah is a co-founder and chairman of Institute for Middle East Understanding, a nonprofit organization committed to equality and peace between Palestinians and Israelis. Ghaith, I'll turn it to you first.
Thank you, Stephen. Every time I share a panel with you, I learn something new about your previous career. So this was informative. Thank you very much for having me here. I mean, I spent the day at the conference, and I must say the energy is contagious. I'm going to be in DC tomorrow, a bit jet lagged, but definitely more energized and fired up. So thank you for that. For those of you who read my bio, I'm a lawyer by training. So I feel a very strong professional compulsion to start my talk with maybe a clarification and a couple of caveats. The clarification being, I was asked to talk about domestic Palestinian violence. All right, in 5 minutes. So I will focus on that. However, it's important to remember that this is all being discussed in the context of the occupation. There is an occupation, it's a reality, I'm not going to dwell on it, but we cannot forget it, and it continues to be the primary issue that actually animates Palestinians. The caveat being, often when I speak about internal issues of politics and reform or what have you, I get one of two reactions that I feel very uncomfortable. One is from the right. I often hear people use the issues of Palestinian reform, democracy, as an excuse not to move towards peace. Meaning, until the Palestinians become Finns, as Dubi Vice Class said, or become Swiss or what have you, we can have no state. I do not accept this. Palestinians have the right to a state. Also, Palestinians deserve, of course, a better government and what have you. But it should never be a precondition. Actually, if we make it a precondition, we undermine those who want to build the Palestinian economy and Palestinian democracy. We don't have that. The flip side of it, of course, my second caveat, as it were, is sometimes when you present the call for Palestinian economy or governance, you have those saying like, you are distracting from the occupation, you are beautifying the occupation. I do not believe that as well. The Palestinians deserve a government that responds to them, a politics that's democratic, and an economy that actually gives them dignity in their own society, and we cannot blame everything on the occupation. There's a lot that we can do for ourselves. We are not only victims, we are also people with agency. So that aside, I'm going to go now for maybe a snapshot of the issues that I see right now that define Palestinian domestic politics. I will of course be telegraphic and looking forward to the conversation about this. The main issue, I think, the most topical now, the most obvious one, is the PLO, or Fatah, or PA, take your pick, script with Hamas. And the New Deal. I don't call it the Unity Deal because I don't think it's real. I see an interesting move, a positive move, creating a government that ostensibly deals with the West Bank and Gaza. This is the first and maybe easiest step when it comes down to actually uniting the Palestinian party. The hard work is still to come. The two issues that I will continue looking at, which will define, that will make or break a real unity, is first of all, can the Palestinians agree on a united Palestinian national vision? Right now, we have two paradigms that I believe are irreconcilable. The PLO talks about a two-state solution, arrived to through peaceful means and through negotiations to create a secular state. Maybe socially conservative, yet a secular state. Hamas talks about a one state over historic Palestine, translate, destroy Israel, reach out through violence to create a theocracy. This circle cannot be squared in my own view. And just like in this country, there was a civil war to define what this country means. Just like in Israel, there was something called the Al-Talaina, small incident that defined where Israel is going. On the Palestinian side, one of these two narratives has to win. And then we can have stability. The other will not disappear, but we have to come in based on rules of games defined by one of the two visions. The two cannot coexist forever. The second complexity, which maybe is more concrete, is the issue of presence of guns in politics. Hamas maintains its militias, as we have seen in many instances, Lebanon being the most obvious. When there are guns in politics, when the politics gets tough, the temptation to reach out and start shooting is a bit too much. And people end up reaching out and starting to shoot. So until we deal with the issues of ideology and the military and armed assets, the unity will continue to be extremely unstable. So I will be looking at these two dynamics to see how they're going to play out the next few months. But the second dynamic that I see in Palestine, the Hamas Fatah is the most obvious, but the one that I see, which even to me might be even more disturbing than that, is the general lack of interest or lack of faith that Palestinians have right now in their political institutions. Hamas, I'm happy to say, from my own ideological point of view, is losing traction. It's losing traction as a result of the general Arab trend where the Muslim Brotherhood-style governments have failed. What happened in Egypt was not only a coup, it was also a public response against the lack of the Muslim Brotherhood to present a viable model, and this is rippling through the region. Hamas is paying the price, but it's also paying the price for its mismanagement of Gaza. They managed to kind of fob it off on the siege first couple of years. Reality is, they came to government promising reform when Ismail Haniyeh, Hamas prime minister, when his son goes to Qatar for fertility treatment, comes back with a contract for a soccer stadium, people start asking, what kind of reform and what kind of transparency? So they're losing. But Fatah is also losing. It's losing in that it's not providing a viable political model for the public. As a label, it's still very attractive. But if you're a young person, you want to join Fatah right now, the only way that you can move forward, that you can progress, is through someone's land, through someone's, and that is not healthy. Right now, majority of Palestinians do not identify with either Fatah or Hamas. There's an election tomorrow. Most people will not show up. I think Fatah will win, but most people will not show up. And that is a very dangerous dynamic for a party in transition. There can be drift, and drift when you have a party that's already volatile is not a good thing for Palestinians, for Palestinian. That's so that this is the other thing that I would continue, or this is the second dynamic I would look at. The third dynamic I would look at is the question of opening the political space in Palestine. Right now, political activism in Palestine is very difficult. There have been serious setbacks on some of the reform efforts that were done by Prime Minister Fayyad, who you heard yesterday. There have been serious setbacks when it comes to freedom of expression and association, and that is not healthy. That's not healthy because with the waning credibility of the two major political parties, there needs to be space for other political parties. And the issue of governance and the issue of reform and non-corruption is very important for re-establishing the credibility of Palestinian governance to the Palestinian public. So this is the other dynamic that I will continue looking at. All of these dynamics, in my view, come together when it comes to elections. And ultimately, the solution to a lot of these is going for elections. Not immediately, not in a month's time, but elections that are done smart, elections that are done when you've established the foundations for creating a real dialogue and debate within the Palestinians, an election that is done in a way that allows different views and different campaigns to be run in a way that presents views and presents real issues for Palestinians to engage in. This is all, for me as someone who follows this issue, is interesting, etc., etc. But the question to you, really, as we're in the United States right now, our sphere of operation, our influence is in America, not in Palestine. What can we do? What should we do? What should our government do? I would say two things. First of all, one thing that disturbs me right now, I'm based in DC, so I follow what's happening there quite closely, is with the collapse or with the pause, or call it what you will, in the big diplomacy, the flashy headline-grabbing diplomacy. There's a sense that talks on both of their houses, we're going to completely disengage, we're going to deal with other issues, and we're leaving the sides to work it out by themselves. This is not healthy. Just because there are no negotiations, it doesn't mean that there aren't things that need to be done on the ground. It doesn't mean the US cannot and should not be engaged with the Palestinians and the Israelis. And with the Palestinians in particular, I'm not going to speak about the Israelis, the US needs to work to continue and to encourage and to ensure that reform, good governance, all of these things continue, and we do this by continuing to support the PA. But as we do that, to push it, but also to help create a space for new voices to emerge. We cannot create new leaders, we should not dare hug new people, but we can protect those who want to come out and express positions by helping create the space, by being very vocal. I look at Egypt, what we did in Egypt. When Morsi was in power, we did not want to rock the boat. We allowed him to take some very unpopular positions or undemocratic decisions, and we paid the price once he was gone. We should not make this mistake with Palestine. We should help create this space. Now, all of this, I'm going to conclude with this. I'm going to repeat what I said in the beginning. These are things that, as Palestinians, they need to be done. We need them. These are things that will clearly help stabilize any future political peace. Yet this should never be a precondition or an excuse to not go for peace. And I will leave you with this thought. We worked. We Americans, we Israelis, we peace-loving people, we worked with Egypt to maintain peace under Mubarak, under Morsi. No one can accuse any of the above of being Democrats and pluralistic and what have you. Yet you worked on it because it was in our national interest, it was in Israel's interest, And so, as we go towards peace, rather than looking for excuses of not reaching peace, let's work for peace, but also in parallel, let's work for these other things. As a superpower, we can actually walk and chew gum together.
Thank you so much, Ghaith, for kicking us off with those insightful remarks. I'm going to turn it over to Huda.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you so much again for being in the room. My job is tough. I'm among men, as you can see, and I hope that I will bring a different perspective about the possibility for a viable Palestinian state. And I'm going to bring it from the grassroots level. The question is, what do you want? What do people want? What are the needs that the Palestinian people are now urging to fulfill? And I think it's a question that goes everywhere. If I ask you here a simple question, what do you need in order to feel that your dignity is maintained, your identity is acknowledged, and that you are a visible kind of person, you are no longer part of the conversation that a land without people and people without land. So we are here, we're the Palestinians, we are on the table, but we also face issues that has to do with failed models of governing. You look at the region in general, and you look at the examples of governing in the region, and you would ask the Palestinians, which one of these models you want to follow or adopt in order to govern. And guess what the answer would be? None. Not exactly. Even, I'm sorry to say that, in the United States, but I don't think even the democratic state of America is actually working, politically speaking. So let's go back. So let's go back to what really people want. What do they need? What an average human being need in order to go by his life and to secure some sort of a dignified kind of life? And I would hear from you guys. I'm not here to lecture you. I want to hear from you. Maybe that will inspire me. So what do you need in order to continue to exist?
Contract law. Contract law. Business.
Business. Okay. Why do you need the business?
So that you can provide for yourself and your family, your goals.
So it's some sort of a financial security for you in order to continue to exist in a sort of like very simple form. What's the other needs?
Independence.
Independence. Why do we need independence?
Well, I would like to be able to think for myself and not have somebody else tell me how to think, what to do, etc., etc.
Absolutely. I need to be acknowledged as a human being with full potential to participate in any kind of form of social or political existence. What else?
A decent healthcare system, although it was improved recently, but far away from a decent one, for all the people who live here, including those who are caring.
Oh, of course, but we know how to use herbs sometimes and cure ourselves, Do some walking, eat some za'atar, you will be fine.
Water, food, and living in a space that is securely safe.
So resources, basically, like you need a little bit of water. It's ridiculous that I have to buy water from a settlement in the West Bank to be able to live, to be able to cook, to drink, not to take a shower on a daily basis. I don't take showers on a daily basis. I miss that about the Bay Area. we need also a freedom of movement. Do you actually believe that if I put checkpoints all over the place in the Bay Area and I ask you to stop every now and then to be checked, and in certain areas you are not even allowed to use your car, which to me is really deeply humiliating, because my car is my world. But sometimes I have to give up on it and put it somewhere in order to cross a checkpoint. It's ridiculous to me as a human being to ask for a permit to go and pray in Jerusalem. I don't want to pray in Jerusalem. I was born in Jerusalem. I am entitled to go and drink beer in Jerusalem. I can't pray. So basically, I do. But these These are very, very simple questions, and the answer to them is really simple, and it comes from a genuine place of need. So I do believe in the human needs theory. If we wanna think of a sort of governance in Palestine, or what is going to be Palestine at some point, these are basic needs. Not to mention talking about borders, army or not army, Jerusalem or not Jerusalem, the refugees themselves, who I feel not qualified enough to speak on their behalf. I have no right to speak on their behalf. Part of my family were refugees, but I'm not a refugee, so I cannot speak on their behalf. And that's something that is really missing from the whole conversation. So there are creative solutions to these difficult questions, but they lie among the people. They are not lying among the upper level of the people that we have been listening to for ages. We have seen on TV more than once. They say the same thing. They never bring something creative to the table. So that's what I'm calling for. If we want a governance that, a model of governance that works in Palestine, I dream of a new way of ruling that maybe has its roots in the tribal system, which I adore and I grow to appreciate, because the tribal system is what sustained the Palestinian community so far. And these are my remarks so far. Thank you.
That's it? All right, Sam, go ahead.
Thanks. So I've had the pleasure of spending the morning here listening and participating. I'm actually excited to see three Palestinians together on a panel, in front of you. I think that's pretty cool. We actually have all, I'm sure, very different views about where to go and a solution, but it's really the nature of the Palestinian community, much as it is with the Jewish community and the Israeli community. And so the fact that we're having this dialogue, that we're here to listen, and that you're here to listen to us, I think is excellent, and really hopefully a foundation for us. Now, I was asked to speak about the Palestinian economy, which is and how it can grow, which was actually quite a challenge. After all, it's really not an economy that we recognize, right? This is the largest employer in Palestine is the government. The government's entirely dependent on donors. It's often in financial crisis. It's a very difficult situation. Private Palestinian companies, have long suffered under military occupation. The way I think about it is they operate much like a scene from Orange is the New Black. They operate in their own sort of, illicit, hidden ways just to try to get anything done with all sorts of rules. It's a very difficult process. And I'll give you a few examples. Exporting goods from Israel takes about half of the time and half the cost for an Israeli company as it does for a Palestinian business. Palestinians who want to import goods to manufacture, to create products, pay double the fees and wait 4 times as long for the products to come in. I run a manufacturing business. I can tell you I could never run a business where I would have to pay 4 times, wait 4 times as long for products to come in. And that's after negotiations and arbitrary delays, and it's really not a predictable 4 times. A simple Skype call to an Israeli settler costs 2 cents a minute. But if I want to call my mom, who lives nearby, who when she's allowed to live there, lives nearby in Ramallah, it's 25 cents a minute to call her. So the costs of these are simple sort of disparities that raise the cost for Palestinian businesses. And really, the economy doesn't operate as a free market system. It's an artificial economy that operates under military and arbitrary military rule. So if you look at the cost of the occupation to the Palestinian economy, it's been estimated by the United Nations that the occupation cost the Palestinian economy about $6.8 billion, which is 85% of the entire Palestinian economy. Okay, so it's a massive tax on the Palestinian economy. It's basically
a year.
I'm sorry. This is the Palestinian economy. Yeah.
Per year.
Per year, exactly.
Thank you.
And so if you look at it, the per capita GDP of an Israeli is roughly now $31,000, and for a Palestinian it's $2,400. So there's a huge gap, and unemployment in Israel is about 6%, and for Palestinians about 23%. So this is a huge, huge wide gap, even though they're sort of right next to each other, side by side. The gap is quite wide, but I'd say the opportunity is actually far larger. And that's where sort of the optimism is. Now, the absolute best scenario is, two side-by-side states, each with control and management of their own natural resources, with full open and mutual acceptance, open interchange of commerce, and societies that see each other as the neighbors they are and not as the enemies they were. And the right solution for the Palestinians is to end the occupation. So it's hard for me to talk about an economy without saying that occupation has to end. That's the only way that there will be a durable and viable economy for the Palestinians. The question is, what can we do now? What can happen today? And how can we change the facts in a positive way? And you heard last night, Salam Fayyad talked about trying to build infrastructure for Palestinians ahead of the state. Now, I'll talk about Palestine. And when I say the word Palestine, it's interesting because I love the discussion this morning about the people being afraid of using the word occupation. Say the word occupation, okay? It's a reality for us. You'll hear it from every Palestinian. Our life, we can't think 2 minutes without saying the word occupation because that's the reality for Palestinians. I use the word Palestine as defined now by the United Nations, even though it's a non-member state and has all these times, but it's very much along the lines of what J Street has said, 67 borders, and and sort of that is the way I think about Palestine, not historical Palestine. So when I say Palestine, think about hopefully a Palestine that we can all agree on. And use the word Palestine, okay? It validates us. We as Palestinians like to hear the word Palestinian, not Arab. I appreciate that. So we think that, so there's 4 things that I think have to happen, and I'll move through these quickly. One is the rule of law. That came up earlier. It's impossible for a private sector to build businesses without a rule of law, without a way to operate and execute. Operating under Israeli military guidelines that's often arbitrary, that's punitive, that restricts certain things in such a way that we can't actually execute is incredibly difficult. I actually have recommended that we create an organization, a group of Palestinian and independent leaders, business people that can arbitrate decisions between Palestinian businesses and the Israeli military to decide, is this really a security issue, that they're going to block a particular chemical that's needed to build a plastic that's needed to produce some goods, or is there a reason that they're delaying export of a particular fruit outside of the West Bank? Is this a security issue, or is this really designed to create Palestinian suffering? And so ways that we can arbitrate that and decide that. Second is safety and freedom of movement for investors and employees. Okay, I couldn't invest in Palestine today myself. Why? Because when I travel to Palestine through Ben Gurion Airport or through the Al-Omari Bridge, I am humiliated. So it's a process of humiliation for me. The Israeli checkpoints look up Sam Jadallah, they see that I've written some op-eds that are critical of the occupation, and they decide it's time for me to sit and wait. And that wait is basically until they close, and that could be 6 to 8 hours on a regular basis. It's just too difficult. It's too difficult for me to travel. It would be impossible for my employees in Palestine to come get training, to engage in a way that we would normally expect. We need to protect Palestinians against settler attacks. We need to sort of make sure that people can move and transport goods in a way that is expeditious. The third item is we have to have a robust communications infrastructure. Today, over 2 billion people currently have digital communications, a digital phone. Everybody in this room has one. 2 billion people, you probably can't name a country that doesn't have digital communications, okay, other than Palestine. Palestinians, by definition, are not allowed, so they still operate on what's called a 2G network. It's an old analog technology. The Israelis think it's a security risk to introduce digital communications for Palestinians. There are 2 billion people in the world who have digital communications. It's absolutely, I would not invest anywhere that didn't have digital communications. We need to enable that. We need to provide the latest technologies to the Palestinians. In some ways, it's impossible, and they shouldn't get 3G, frankly, directly, because Palestinians should not be on a permanent treadmill that's always a decade behind the Israeli counterparts. It's to our benefit and the Israeli benefit. And then finally, we have to be able to invest in all of Palestine. So geographically, Palestine is very small. It's 1/3 the size of Israel. Okay, so if you just want to just compare it. And yet, 60% of Palestine is Area C, which Palestinians have no access to. They can't develop, they can't utilize. And so it's off limit for development purposes. And in fact, Palestinians often can't even work near Area C. And so that basically means that there's 30% of Palestine, which is 1/3 itself of Israel, is really the only place that Palestinians can operate. And within that, they have borders and they have restrictions. We know that if they just open up the rest of Palestine, the Palestinian economy alone will grow by 35%. So I think about these as the requirements. I call it MVP. I'm a technology guy, so we have to come up with acronyms, but that means minimally viable Palestine. And that's what it requires. Now, one point we've talked about earlier, which is the BDS effort, and I think it's really important to understand that boycotts and divestment are important nonviolent tools to apply. Support of the Palestinian economy requires not supporting the businesses that profit from the occupation. Okay, this is the occupation and the Palestinian economy are a zero-sum game. Period. If one grows, the other shrinks. They cannot grow together. I'll give you an example. Settlers export about $285 million a year of agricultural products from the West Bank under the label Made in Israel. The same number for Palestinians, $19 million. And the reason is that there's only a limited amount of land and water and natural resources available. And so water gets diverted from Palestinians to settler organizations, and they get to grow the crops, and they send out the economy. And so this is, Palestinians are left basically with crumbs of land and drips of water. It's really important that's why I believe that support of the BDS effort, particularly against the occupation, is important. So the final part I want to say is basically, if you look at it, I think one day we're going to have a situation where you can imagine a time where Palestinians and Israelis cooperate together, where the boundaries come down, we can create an incredible Holy Land experience for people of all religions, where they can come and enjoy the Muslims and Christians and Jews together to celebrate their religions. And the Israelis and the Palestinians can benefit from those businesses. They can get people to open their wallets to really create a great experience. And so I believe that we have to come together, and this is really necessary. I hope we can make this a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I want to stay on the topic of the Palestinian economy. Last night we heard from Prime Minister Salam Fayyad, who made a very significant effort in institution building in preparing the institutions for a Palestinian state. So I want to ask you, Sam, is the Palestinian economy ready for statehood? Ghaith, is that even a fair question? And Huda, if you could explain to us the tensions between economic peace and normalization, and sort of explain what both terms mean in the way that you use them.
Sure. I think the first part is, are the Palestinians ready for to build the infrastructure and the economy? There's no doubt that in the Palestinian community there's incredible talent. So Palestinian businessmen, educated in the West, educated in the United States, building some great businesses, they're capable. It's not a question of capability. But Palestinians absolutely don't want to be a donor society. They can't live under the auspices of today, the occupation. And they need to be treated with full equality in their ability to operate and their execute. Nobody's asking for special rights, they're only asking for equal rights. And that is, that is an important requirement to happen. I believe that equality happens ahead of sort of the statehood, and it is a requisite to sort of build a Palestinian economy. The Palestinian economy drives hope. And that hope, I was joking this morning, the hope is the only reason we can actually drive for it every day, because when you talk to Palestinians, it is a crushing occupation for them, and they need that hope. And that hope to build a business, that hope to provide for that family, that hope to drive down the unemployment is what is a massive motivator for people, so they will absolutely gravitate to it.
I don't know if fair is the right word. I mean, I would say it's a very understandable question, and I hear it actually from many Israelis of goodwill, who are nervous. You don't want to build a state next to you that's going to collapse and suddenly you have a power vacuum and we're in a mess. So I understand where it's coming from. Yet I believe, as I mentioned earlier, this is not, look, I mean, Israel has an interest in helping to support the development of the Palestinian economy. Many Israelis understand it. I mean, interestingly, based on what you said, with the Area C, you know who's in Israeli governance system the most supportive of the idea of giving Palestinians access to Area C are the IDF. Maybe counterintuitively. Why the IDF? Because they've been working with the Palestinian security services, the newly reformed Palestinian security services, and know they have a partner they can trust on the other side. So this is, it's understandable. Israel has an interest in working it. Israel continues to work it. Yet, at the end of the day, if this is a test of worthiness, then I would say it's extremely unfair, and it's an excuse. I mean, I look at the region. I grew up in Jordan. Okay, by the way, I grew up in Jordan, so the tribal system might not be the best thing that you want.
If I grew up in Boston, I'd be worried about that tribal system.
Jordan, on paper, is a country that should have failed decades ago. Yet, we tend to underestimate sometimes the strength of the human spirit, the strength of the human ingenuity, and particularly for Palestinians, who, despite the occupation and the hardships and everything, still managed to actually have a very impressive, interesting economy and entrepreneurship. So ultimately, at the end of the day, will the Palestinian state economically succeed or fail? We do not know. It's up to the Palestinians themselves. But I think it is the right of the Palestinians to try, succeed or fail. There are many models of success or failure. There is no way of knowing whether they can succeed or fail until the Palestinians have mastery of their own destiny. I can tell you one thing. Until the occupation continues, or as long as the occupation continues, an economy cannot be created. You can only go this far. And then you hit the obstacles that Sam and others talked about. So this is kind of one of these chicken and egg, but at the end of the day, there's a question of rights here that we cannot ignore and we cannot have conditions.
And on the question of normalization, we actually have a dilemma of defining normalization in Palestine and Israel. In Palestine, mainly, if we see thousands of workers go to Israel every day, crossing the checkpoint to go and work in Israel as a cheap labor with no rights whatsoever, and still we think it's normal to do that. But if you have an academic or a peace activist who participates in a conference where the voice is presented, that is seen as unnormal, and we should not do it. We should boycott any kind of forum that has Israelis in it. And then we come to the economic question. We have been trying for ages to convince the Palestinian people to stop using any kind of Israeli product, period, without even defining it as a settlement product or a Tel Aviv product. We failed so far as activists to do that because actually the alternative is not that good, and we are kind of spoiled. We used to the Nova milk, but not Vanablis milk. And the third part, it has to do with the fact that there is no guarantee that corruption is not going to prevail when there's economy in the Palestinian community. We have lost faith in the system that is governing us in Palestine. We don't trust the secular model or the religious model. And in both cases, those models have managed to do a good job in terms of corruption. So we cannot actually believe that they have the Palestinian economy in their best interest. One of the things that sometimes brings the worst of me when it comes to normalization is that we do not actually, we are not smart about it as Palestinians. The conversation is going in the community. We have all kinds of debates about normalization, but we are not smart about it. And lately I've been talking to people, like I get in a taxi and I talk about normalization. And I have different takes on it. So you have the people who tell you we have to be very selective about it, about normalization. If there is a venue for Palestinians to go and speak their mind without being asked to be nice and to be actually very true to their identity, then let's go for it. But when we have theater production that shows the Palestinian narrative alongside with the Israeli narrative that will be shown in London, then hell breaks loose. Everybody is against it, don't go and don't do it. So in that sense, we are not smart. We are also not smart in the fact that we are not actually boycotting. There is no strong movement in Palestine among the Palestinians to boycott products. But actually the opposite is happening. The Israeli government is being very smart about it. It's giving permits to Palestinians to go and celebrate Eid in Haifa and Jaffa, and then buy all kinds of, they do a sale there, and then the Palestinians buy all kinds of goods that actually got the Israeli government a huge amount of money last year from Palestinians who went to have a barbecue by the beach. So, without thinking of the beach as Israel or Palestine. So it's just, this is a hunger for the Palestinians to just get out of what is called the West Bank and what we in the future are going to call Palestine, hopefully. So these are the things that shape the mentality of the regular Palestinian when it comes to economy. These are also the fears of actually jumping into even a small business. Like sometimes I'm hoping that one day I'll be able to be more active in terms of empowering women businesses. It is very hard to do that. It is very hard to do it because where are you going to get the needles if we want to do embroidery? Where are you going to get the needles and the threads to do it? You have to go through the Israeli system. And you have to go through the Palestinian system. And if you are coming through Jordan, you have to go through the Jordanian system. So who wants to do that? And the last part that has to do with also the culture of dependency. The donor community, working with the civil society, the Palestinian civil society, have managed to make us beg for money. So suddenly we turn to be beggars than someone who initiates new ideas and brings home some sort of economy that is viable. We are now, when we see someone, we see the dollar sign. So, and what we do is we use our victimhood narrative in order to get them to play on their guilt, to get them to give us money. And this is very damaging to the soul and heart of the Palestinian community. And I'm actually very concerned about also the other model which is by our side, which is Israel. The system also in Israel is not working. It's not very, very encouraging of businesses. It's not very encouraging of equal rights when it comes to labor. It's not encouraging in terms of women. It's not encouraging in terms of the newcomers who come to Israel. It's very, very self-destructive within Israel. So basically, we don't have a model to follow. And I hope that at some point, maybe we will put our heads together and find a model that works based on the people's needs.
And it's something that I feel very strongly about, is that this anti-normalization, frankly, the ones who really suffer are people like us. People who want to engage and who want to build a degree of communication. It's definitely not the settler who doesn't want to talk to a Palestinian anyways. So I have a big problem with it, and frankly, I think there's a responsibility on the US, I come back to the US here, as we engage the Palestinians. I think it's very important for us to push the Palestinian leadership, someone like President Abbas, who meets with the Israeli peace movement regularly. We need the US to push the Palestinian leadership to create cover, political cover, for those Palestinians who want to build bridges with Israelis. If we want to talk about a Palestinian partner, which I believe exists in the government, they also have to take some tough decisions and protect their natural constituency. But for us, not willing to raise this issue with the Palestinian leadership because we don't want to rock the boat, we're not helping ourselves, the United States, and we're certainly not helping the cause of peace in Palestine.
So the Palestinian Authority was created out of Oslo, which we've now passed the 20-year anniversary since Oslo. And I think one of the questions that folks over the past several years have been wondering is, when are we going to see sort of a Palestinian spring against the Palestinian Authority for not being able to deliver a 20 years of interim agreement to not being able to deliver a state? And so my question for you, Huda, is what do you see in terms of the PA and sort of civil society and where the people are in terms of their support of the PA. Sam, I want to ask you, President Abbas has threatened to turn back the keys of the West Bank to Israel and dissolve the PA. What would that do to the Palestinian economy? And Ghaith, what are the chances that that would actually happen, given the salaries that Sam mentioned coming into Palestine from donors, and what would sort of the political impact be of handing back the keys to the West Bank? So I'll ask each of our panelists to respond. Try to keep your remarks to under 2 minutes so that we can then turn to the audience for questions.
Well, the position of most of the Palestinians from the Palestinian Authority is clear. We don't like them. And frankly, at some point, we liked Mahmoud Abbas a lot when he said that I'm giving the keys back to the occupation authorities. We, as human beings living in that place that is called now Palestine, is not hopeful about the system. And we are not hopeful about any other system. So in my opinion, the Palestinians know how to complain, and they know how to do it very well so far. And that worries me a lot, because that's a symptom of the comfort zone of victimhood. But also, there are chances where, there were chances, like in 2002, when the Palestinian people were very angry with Yasser Arafat, and they wanted, you could feel the heat in the street against the Palestinian Authority and against him. But thanks to Sharon, a visit to the Al-Aqsa, or the Haram Sharif, it kind of turned the whole compass towards a second intifada. So we actually do not stand a chance. If we want to do a Palestinian Spring against the Palestinian Authority, we actually don't stand a chance, because if we want to go in the streets, we have Palestinian police who is unfortunately and sadly trained to suppress us. And we have on the checkpoints and the borders Israeli army who is ready to kill us for sport sometimes. And if we want to engage in some sort of a political opposition in Palestine, you have to prove yourself enough to be from a family that supports you in order to participate in elections. We are still in that mentality. In my opinion, we are not ready for some sort of a democratic kind of process that would produce a different leadership from what we have now. The Palestinian Liberation Organization, for a lot of time, kind of given up or not given the chance, did not give the chance for local Palestinian leadership to emerge, either in Palestine or outside Palestine, even in the diaspora. We were always told that the people who have the right to be leaders are the people who have left in 1948 and have become part of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. There are so many talents among the Palestinians. There are so many qualities for leadership among the Palestinians, among women in Palestine. Yet, we're not given even that chance on the level of university student union elections. We still believe that a man has to lead. And that man has to have some sort of a tribe behind him that would support him, and has some money on him, and sometimes a degree.
The Palestinian economy is an artificial economy, as I said. So it's not a real economy. So from the Palestinian perspective, the turning over the keys back to the Israelis is actually a good thing. And the reason is because the Palestinians in general view that the occupation has been enabled by the Palestinian Authority, that their primary responsibility is security of Israelis. So Palestinians are killed at the ratio of about 25 to 1 between Palestinians and Israelis, and so Palestinians are saying we're not even safe, and we've not been protected by our own government. So Palestinians are in general ready for it. This economy needs to be rebooted. I would not like to see the keys turned back, because I'd love to see a real solution happen. But listen, Oslo was supposed to produce a Palestinian state by 1998. And so patience has run out, and people have no confidence, and they certainly don't want what they view as an enablement of the occupation. And unfortunately, the Palestinian government has now been viewed as an enablement of the occupation.
Before we get to answers, I just want to invite anybody who has a question to form a line by this microphone and give 2 minutes.
Yes, no, maybe. Is that the answer? No. Very quickly, disbanding the PA, and I choose my word carefully, disbanding the PA is not going to happen. It's not going to happen for a number of reasons. Partly, and I hear, maybe I disagree with my co-panelists, I think that people realize that if it goes, there's no salaries, there's no livelihood, and actually people care about that, irrespective of what. People make decisions not only based on ideas, but based on economic realities. And I will also add, though, it's not only an economic choice. There's an understanding, and I believe, a fear that if the PA collapses, then with it there'll be a collapse of Fatah as an organization, the PLO, which only exists right now as a title, not as a real organization. So there's a real fear that if the PA collapses, then the national political institutions will collapse, and when a political institution collapses, it cannot be rebuilt overnight. It took the Palestinians 20 years from 1948 to regain their mastery of their own politics from the Arabs in 1968. I don't see it happening yet. Because it's going to be disbanded, doesn't mean it's not going to collapse. And my concern, I don't see a Palestinian spring for these reasons, and also because Palestinians don't know. Do you have a spring against the Palestinian Authority or against the occupation, and it gets confused and there's no... But what can happen is it collapses because people stop having faith in it, stop showing up to work, stop showing up to elections. So rather than a disbandment, you will have a slow erosion and a collapse. Either way, the prospects are scary.
All right, so we have 10 questions lined up. I'm going to actually cut it at that, and we'll see if we have more time. But I'd like us to try to get through these 10 questions. I'd ask all of our participants to share your name, to make sure that you're asking a question and not a statement, and to direct your question to one of our panelists if that makes sense. And also, if it can be a yes and no question, please ask it as such. We'll go through 3 questions and then answers.
Hi there, my name is Yasmin Sirhan. Just very quickly, thank you so much for all of you for being here today. My question is, as all of you know, or I'm sure you're aware, there are more Palestinians within the diaspora than there are within Palestine itself. So my question is, and forgive me for not directing this as a particular person, whoever wants to take it can, but what do you think, or in what way do you think the Palestinian diaspora should be empowered and mobilized? Because I think as you saw here today, there's plenty of American Jewry being mobilized within their diaspora, but as a Palestinian youth within the diaspora, I feel like there's very little sense of direction. So how do you think that would impact our movement, and what ways do you think that should happen? Thank you.
No, I guess I represent her. Okay.
Go ahead. We'll take 3 questions.
Some of the detractors, my name is Willie, some of the detractors of Palestinian independence point to the exile of the Christian Arab population from Palestine, especially in the area of Hebron and Bethlehem. Can you give us a rebuttal or your analysis of that phenomenon?
Welcome to Los Angeles, to San Francisco. I'm from Los Angeles. So I'm an Israeli, and I'm also a community organizer. And my question is directed actually at each one of you. My focus is how, as an Israeli, I'm a little bit close. How, as an Israeli ally who lives in the United States, can I support my Palestinian colleagues? I work specifically with Muslims and Jews in Southern California. But in the diaspora community in general, how can I support my Palestinian colleagues who are clearly wanting to hold their own community accountable? It's not for me to say. I can hold my community accountable. I can hold my leaders accountable when they don't represent my interests. But where can I help widen those cracks? Because as far as I'm concerned, I know what they say to me in the comfort of our living rooms and in our meetings. But when it comes to, even social media, but anything in the public sphere, the conversation really changes. So what's the courage? What does it take for us to be really supportive allies? Thank you for being here.
So on the first question about the Palestinian diaspora, I guess as a representative from that, we have in much like the Jewish community feels like they've got this tie to Israel. Palestinians have a tie to Palestine in a way that is deep and personal. And we're very disorganized, so we don't have stations like J Street or APAC, or we don't have lobbying forces. We're just very tribal, I guess might be the right word, and we have a lot to do. And I think there are some organizations. There is definitely people starting to speak up. Feel free to grab me a little bit later, Yasmin, if you want to talk about that. But I do think that we have to come out of the closet in a way that really sort of is proud. And it's been difficult. I was joking with some folks actually 2 nights ago, some American Jews, and I basically said, in some ways, this is our time. This is our time where we are the one who's victimized. We're the one who's sort of viewed as, Palestinians a bad word. It used to be Catholics, it used to be Jews, it used to be other groups. It's ours now. And so we have to somehow own that and step up and speak up in a way. And frankly, we need your support. Okay? Your support as Jews is what it means to stand up for justice and to stand up for people who are disenfranchised, to speak up and say, it's okay. And for us, that would be an important message to us, because we are not trying to be, it's important for us to be able to speak up against the occupation, yet not be labeled anti-Semitic. And at the core, that is the biggest offense that we have against us. So frankly, we're looking for bridges like this, and we're reaching out to you as a community to help us.